In this installment of Unpacked.
My father was very, very abusive. He opened my legs, and then after opening my legs, he just went in. If you tell anyone about this, I'm gonna kill you. My mom landed on the floor that night, and she took an axe and she hit him.
Wow.
That's when life changed.
Growing up in an orphanage can be harrowing and horrendous, or it can actually be quite positive. Today's guests are here to share their stories. Let's unpack. Mbali Kumalo was 6 years old when her mother passed away. This saw her and her siblings having to be moved to family to be taken care of. The events in the hands of the new caregivers led to Mbali being taken to an orphanage. At the age of 2, Khanyesa Sithole was separated from her mother, whose circumstances did not allow for her to raise her children. With no other family in Johannesburg, she was then taken to a children's home where she lived for 21 years. This is part 1 of their stories. Let's unpack. Mbali, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Khanyesa as well, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so Khanyesa, what are the events that led up to you having to be in an orphanage? Take us back to those circumstances.
Okay, so I grew up with my mother and my brothers. I have 2 brothers and my father. We lived in Komkukung in Davidson. And my father was very, very abusive. He would drink alcohol and he'd come home drunk and beat on my mom and beat on us as well. I was still a baby at this time. And one day, things got out of hand. My mom told me that apparently he wanted to take us to, my father's from Mozambique. He wanted to take us to Mozambique so that Sithole in Mozambique. And my mom, he told my mom that he just wants her to live without her kids. So what happened was things spiraled out of control. And my mom landed on the floor that night and she took an axe and she hit him.
Wow.
Without the intention of, her intention wasn't to kill him. It was just self-defense. But it happened, and that's when life changed.
So what then happened after that incident?
So after the incident, police got involved. So social workers were also called. We were still young.
How old were your siblings at the time? Because you say there was...
So my brothers were... My eldest brother was about 10. And then the second born was about 6, and I was about a year old. And the social workers got involved, and they arrested my mom. She didn't want to go on trial because that just drags things. So she obviously pleaded guilty, and they took her in to the correction service facility.
And what did she plead guilty to?
For murdering my father. Yeah.
So now she's taken, dad is gone.
Yes.
What happens to you guys?
So dad is gone, she's taken to prison. I go into prison with my mom because I was still breastfeeding. I know that the law allows for kids to live in the prison with their moms, but you have to leave at 2 years old. So I had to separate. So my mom basically had a year to just bond with me. And then when I reached the 2-year mark, we separated and I went to a place of safety.
And in that time, where were your siblings when you were in prison with your mom?
They were already taken to a children's home in Soweto.
And, you know, one would immediately think, how? But as Black people, we have big families. Where are the relatives?
Yes. That's another question that I struggle with that because I also asked myself as to why didn't we go and stay with our aunts and uncles? But I understood the reason behind that because my mom's families from KZN. So her being arrested in Johannesburg, the process of her having to transfer to a prison in KZN would also just take and drag. And then my brothers were already settled in the children's home that they were in. So she explained to us that it would have been better for us to just stay in Joburg because that would be easy. She could just monitor how we're growing and how our are we being well taken care of. She just wanted to also be involved. Although she was behind bars, she wanted to be involved as much as possible in our lives.
No, and I understand because the proximity thing is important. You would have barely been able to see your mom if you had gone to live with family in KZN.
Yes.
So now at this point, you are taken to a place of safety because, it's time for you to leave.
Yes.
Were you reunited with your siblings?
No, I wasn't reunited with my siblings. So at the place of safety, it was just a 6-month, it was temporary. So I stayed there for 6 months while the social workers found me something more permanent. And the children's home that my brothers were in was full, so they had to find me something else. And that's when they found the children's home that I grew up in. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention the name.
No, you can. Go ahead.
Yes, and that's when they found the Johannesburg Children's Home for me. And that's where I grew up.
From your side in Bali, what are the events that led up to you having to be in an orphanage?
Okay, so with mine, I grew up in a farm. So we already had a disadvantage. So when my mom passed on when I was 6 years old. So when she passed on, we were 5 siblings with my sisters, and it was just my sisters and 2 other boys that my grandmother found. I don't know the story between them. And then when we grew up, and then there was a case of our mom has passed on, so who can come and assist my grandmother with taking care of us? So there was an uncle who was available, who was not working at the time, who was just sitting at home. So he came over and stayed with us. And then it was 3 months down the line, because he started becoming too comfortable. He would bath us. Obviously, you're 6, you don't know how to bath yourself. You need someone to bath you before you go to school and after school, late at night. So my grandmother was working at a kitchen, in my kitchen at the time. So when she was working there, she would knock off really late, around 6. So my uncle would be responsible for us bathing, doing our homeworks, and cooking. So he will take care of the home all around. So he called me, I think one afternoon. I was playing with my friends outside. And he called me into one of the shacks at home at the back. And then he said to me, it's time to bath. So in my mind, I'm like, it's around 4, but I also don't want to question a lot of things. I'm like, so I get in, and then he says, take off your clothes. I take them off, and then he baths me. The moment he takes me, and then he puts me on top of a bed. And then at that moment, he said, don't tell anyone about this. And he opened my legs. And then after opening my legs, he just went in. And after he was done, he said, wear your clothes, you are dirty. But if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to kill you. I left home, we went out.
And you were still how old at the time?
I was 6. I went out. Obviously, my legs are painful. I can't go play with my friends anymore. I just sat there at the corner of the kitchen until my grandmother came back. So he had left and he went to drink. When my grandmother came back, we ate as usual. I was scared of my grandmother. So we sat down. So I started that night, I remember, because I was bleeding. So I think she also couldn't understand. But also at the back of her mind, it's like, I have to leave at 6 a.m. and go to work. So I can't attend to this and also attend to a child who's crying and who's decided to self-isolate. So the next morning, we dress up, we go to school. I didn't even want to go to school because my legs were painful and we used to walk to school. So my uncle is the one that beat me to actually go to school that day. So he beat me up with a belt. I walked to school. When I got to school, I think the teacher realized that there's something wrong with me. And then when we were sitting there, the teacher asked all of the kids and said, you can go to the bathroom. And then they went to the bathroom and said, Mbali, stay behind. I stayed behind. And then she asked me what's wrong. Because you are bleeding and you're not supposed to be bleeding. You are 6. So what's happening? It's around 2002. At the time, in 2002, rape was not such a big deal like it is now. Like, it's not out there.
It wasn't as prevalent.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, and then she calls the principal. The principal said, no, let's call the police. And then they called the police. The police asked me what happened. I told them. And then we went to the doctor. They took the results. After they took the results, they went home. The police went home looking for my uncle. They didn't find him. He came back the same night at around 1 a.m. And he said he's going to finish me off, like all of those things. I'm going to finish you off. I'm going to do it again. They will never find me. I know that my mom will protect me. So the person we were staying with is my great-grandmother. And then there's my grandmother. So the whole family was called the following day, and it was discussed as to how much of a lie I am.
Wow.
That I will lie about this. I've always wanted attention. So it's fine. My uncle can go to jail. They're going to pay bail for him. And that's exactly what happened. A week after that, he was back home. He did the exact same thing. You say it again this time, I'm going to kill you for real this time. And then I told him, but I didn't say anything to anyone. So how did the police know? I told him I didn't say anything to anyone. He repeated again. He raped me again. And then after raping me, that time he told me to bath. I bath, and then after bathing, he says I should go and play with my friends. So one of my friends saw that there's something wrong. Why is this guy always calling you around a particular time whilst my other siblings are out playing? And I said to my friend, I don't know. Our neighbor then called the social workers and the police. This thing is continuing. And I think that's where they started taking it more serious than it was. But he wasn't arrested also, something which I didn't understand. He was not arrested. He ran away. He managed to run away. I don't know where did he run away to. And then I was taken into a place of safety, to Delmas, at a location. And then I stayed there. My grandfather came back. And then my grandfather arranged that I am taken back home. So he spoke to one of the neighbors to give me money to take a taxi so I can go back home. So I went back home, and then he argued that he's going to protect me, that he's never going to come again. But my grandfather comes home Fridays until Sunday.
And then the rest of the week he's not there.
He's not there. And that's where he gets an opportunity. So it's just a lot of back and forth into... I stay in different homes. Like I would be taken to this place of safety, and then there will somehow my grandfather and my grandmother will find a way into that home, that particular home they put me in, and then I'll go back home. And then I'll be then taken back again to another place of safety until eventually they found a children's home when I was 10. Then they found a children's home. We went. They said 5 of us should go. My 2 other sisters denied. They said they are adults. They can't go.
How old were they?
The other one, at the time, my eldest sister was in matric.
Yes.
And then the other one was in grade 9.
Okay.
Yes. She said she doesn't want to go because she had started living her own life at that time. So they just took us and we left. Before we left, a family meeting was called again, and to how much of a liar and a betrayer I am of the family. Now we are all going away because you're a liar.
Wow.
They are taking these kids because of your lies. You couldn't have said this. It was supposed to be dealt with as a family. And then we get to the children's home. The first day we arrived, it was completely something that I had experienced. Because at home it's noisy, it's out there. And also you get used to the fact of the way you live. If there's no sugar here, you go and ask for sugar there. Everyone knows everyone. So when I arrived at the children's home, it was completely different.
Before we get into the details of the children's home, you mentioned that they would keep taking you to a place of safety. What does that mean? Because, maybe there's specific terms that if a person's going to an orphanage, it's actually a registered facility where they can take kids in. What did place of safety mean when you say that? Is it like a temporary place where people can foster and any child can come in and out, and that's where you were? Or was it like a family? Like, what was that setup?
It's more of for my setup was a particular, like there are women who gives themselves in the community that says, my home will be a place of safety. But mostly you'll find that it's women who can't have kids. So my experience with a place of safety was me staying with these women every time.
So the same woman?
Yes.
Okay, and you would be there temporarily. It was never like, this is a permanent situation?
No, it was never a permanent situation. You wouldn't even be told. At 7, you are not told anything because it was like, no, pack your bags. Footy with me, it was not even a matter of pack your bags. I would go to school and I would not come back from school. So I'd go to school in the morning and then afternoon, I leave to another place. The social worker will be at the gate. No, we're going to another place. And then I go to another place. I was not explained as to what's happening. Why am I staying with this woman? I was never told or asked or something. It was just, no, today, this is where you're going to stay.
Okay, we'll come back to that discussion. So you now are taken to a children's home. You're not with your siblings.
No.
You are very, very young at the time, so I'm sure the memories are a bit fuzzy. Do you recall anything at that time?
Yeah, I do recall that when I got to the children's home, I spoke Afrikaans. I didn't know a word in Zulu. I still struggle with Zulu till this day. I know that I was a problem child. I was naughty. I was just spiraling out of control.
Are you talking about yourself as a 2-year-old?
As a 2-year-old, I was really, really out of control. Like, the terrible twos. I think I was on a different level. Like, I was really, really naughty. And I think it all happened because I was trying to understand why am I moving so much? I cannot, like, when I try to settle in, no, it's time to go. You have to go somewhere else. So I settled in at home with my mom. Then she committed this crime. And then I had to settle with her in prison. I'm seeing all the colors on the wall. It's lovely. After that, I have to settle in a children's place of safety with the cots and us pulling each other, playing with different babies my age. And then I had to settle into a children's home. So my language as well just disappeared.
Yeah, which is understandable. So you say you remember. What were your earliest memories at the children's home?
My earliest memories at the children's home I'd have to say playing with the other kids and climbing on trees and playing with sand. Yeah.
How many children would you say about were in the home with you at the time?
At the time, the home accommodated about 65 kids. So it was different cottages. So it would be, there was a cottage from cottage 2 to cottage 7, and 10 kids would stay in each house. As time went by, things changed at the home where girls and boys had to be separated. But yeah, it was just a matter of different age groups staying together and the youngsters staying together. That's how it changed. But before, when I got there, it was wherever there's a space in whichever cottage, that's where the child was put, and we had to adjust. And we always needed to remember that you shouldn't get comfortable because you can be moved to a different house. So for me, I never get too comfortable because of that, because I know that things will change.
That is one of the questions that I had is, did you find, because you keep moving, that you are never able to truly be settled and feel relaxed in a place?
Yeah, I'm hard on myself in that sense because I'm never too settled. I'm always moving somewhere. It's never, I never stay in a place for more than 2 years. Even now in my adult life, it's also just, and I do see a psychologist to assist me with this, but it's also difficult to deal with like on your own and just wondering, why can't I just settle in one space and be happy in that space?
What were some of your early memories of when you eventually got taken to a home?
It was, when we arrived, my biggest thing has always been with clothes. So the first time we got there, they checked our clothes and they figured that, those clothes are not up to our standard. Like, let us go and look for other clothes for them. So when I got there, it was clothes for me. I don't want to lie. It was just like clothes and the food. Because when we arrived, they took us into a dining hall and we were eating fish and chips. It was also my first time having fish and chips and a green salad. So that was the happiest moment, I think, that I had of an hour that I was like, okay, this place is really great. Yes.
And I mean, how many were in the home that you were in?
At the time, we were 104. Yes. When I arrived, we were 104.
Is this including you and your siblings?
It's including me and my siblings.
Yes.
Because when you arrive, it's also like different cottages, but we don't refer to them as cottages. It's a house. So they would say, this is house 1, house 2, house 3. So there's about 12 of us. There's up to 10 houses, yeah. And then there'll be, when I arrived, boys and girls were staying together in the same house. But then as time goes on, I don't know what happens. They just separate you guys, and then it's like girls one side, boys one side. Yes.
And it's obviously the older that you get? Or is that in time?
In time.
Oh, okay.
You would come in and then you'll settle in for like 6 months and they check your performance at school. How do you relate to other kids? And then after like 6-7 months, and they're like, okay, now you can separate. The boys stay this side, the girls stay this side.
Talk to me about what school was like when you actually had to start going to school, because you were quite young going into a home. What was that experience like for you?
So at the children's home, when I arrived, I lived in cottage 7. And there was I'd say a high school that they call, well, I can't say the name, sorry, up the road. And there was a creche. So I started at that creche, and that's where I got to meet different people. Now, it's also a bit confusing because I stay with like so many people already that I have to learn, and then I go to the creche and I still have to learn the people around there. So I didn't really make friends at creche because I knew that I had friends just down the road. And then grade 1 started and I went to a very, very nice primary school. It was a white primary school. So that also made things difficult in terms of dealing with my emotions because it was a very privileged school. And now I'm wondering Why don't I have half the things that they have? And why are their parents dropping them off and giving them kisses goodbye and I just get dropped off? So when I was asking myself those questions, there was a day that I decided, no, I'm just going to make matters difficult for everybody. So they put me in the transport to go to school, and I'd throw temper tantrums. I wouldn't want to go to school. I wouldn't want to get up. I wouldn't want to do anything. Like, going to school was not an option. I would cry. Other kids are in the transport waiting to be dropped off, and I'm wasting time. Now time is running out. People are getting late for school, and I'm crying. They're trying to get me in the car. I'm strong. I don't know where I got the strength from, trying to fight two adults that are trying to get me into this transport, but I'm not budging. They eventually get me in, and I'd go to school. Still the same thing. I get to school. When I look back at it now, it's very embarrassing. But I would still cry and throw tantrums, and in class it was worse. I wanted the attention to be on me, and the teacher must forget about the other kids, because at home I have to share the attention. There's only one adult in the house that I live in, and I have to share with the other people that I call my siblings. And then when I go to school, I still have to share. When is it my turn? You know, I'm asking, when is it my turn to have a one-on-one with an adult, and to the affection, that love you get from your parents? When is it my turn? So school, from my grade 1 to grade 3, was horrible.
And in that time, did you ever get to visit your mom?
Oh, yes. I would. They wouldn't tell me I'm going to visit my mom at the home. They would just, I'd come back from school, change my clothes, wash my socks, polish my shoes, and they'd say, go and sit in the lounge. And I'd go sit in the lounge, and they'd give me cardboard and pencils, crayons and everything, and they'd say, make a card for your mom. Make a card for my mom. I was still lost. So I'd make a card, and then they'd tell me what to write, because I didn't know what to put on it. I'm still oblivious to what's happening, but I'm in it. So I'd write a card. My mom still has them till this day, and I say, I miss you, I love you, draw a flower. And then the next morning, they'd say, you're not going to school. We go to the prison, and they wouldn't make us visit her through a class or through bars.
Yes.
They'd literally have a room for us, and we'd go inside, and we'd find her seated already, and we'll just have interaction for that little bit of time. But I think the emotional part for me was, okay, she's seeing her kids, but then we have to leave her there. So for me, that was like, it was difficult. And then that also affected me in school, because she came out when I was in grade 3. But I was still asking the question, okay, my mom is out. Why am I not going home to my mom? I was just disruptive still. Prize giving was also another thing. You'd see, parents seeing their kids, oh, that's my child, my child, and they take pictures. And then for me, it was just a lousy applause. I didn't have that other support. So it was also like another thing that I have to deal with. So it was just one after the other.
Up until the point that your mom was released, so you were getting an opportunity to visit her in prison, did you know and understand where she was and why she was there?
I didn't know and understand. I understood where she was. Why she was there, I didn't know until I got my hands on my portfolio book in primary school. And that's where I read it. Because at the children's home, they wouldn't allow us to read our files. I don't know why, but I got my hands on my portfolio book, and that's where I read everything.
And what did it say?
It basically gave my mom's name, her age and what the incident that occurred, the name of my father's name, and it was basically letting the school know the kind of child that I am without me having to tell them who I am. Yeah.
When would you say it was, in terms of your age, that you read that?
This was when I was in grade 6. That's when I got my hands on
the file.
The file.
But up until that point, what in your mind did you think was the reason your mom was there?
In my mind, I didn't know. I was just going with the flow of things. It wasn't like something I could ask my mom at the time because I was young, and obviously I respect her. So I couldn't just roll up and say, hey, Mom, why were you there? You know, I had to gradually work my way into asking her. So as I got older, I could ask her more questions that gave me more insight into the story. But before that, I didn't know. And when I was in grade 3, like I said, she came out. Then I went to grade 4, and I was still a problem because I'm still asking myself, why am I not going home? My mom is out. Why do I only get the opportunity to see her on the holidays for 2 weeks and then I have to come back? So grade 4 was a tough year for me. I failed. I ended up failing grade 4. And then that's when things changed perspective-wise for me. That's when I said, okay, I can do better. My circumstance isn't something that's going to hold me back from achieving my goals. So that's when, I started picking up my socks and I told myself, it's never going to happen again. I'm not failing again. And I think that helped me. Having failed a grade helped me a lot. The home used to take me to see a psychologist as well, and they diagnosed me with depression and ADD. So that also opened my eyes a bit more. It was more clear as to why am I behaving in this way? Why am I being disruptive? So now I understand the reasoning behind it. So I'd see a psychologist. I started seeing a psychologist when I was in grade 4, when I repeated grade 4.
Next time on Unpacked.
Definitely, it was better living in a home, and I'm grateful. I'm really grateful because sometimes going back home is not an option. Like with me, it was not an option.
Is he still there?
He's still there.
Your uncle is still there at home?
He is. He is. He said I ruined his life.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.